I don't like the name Bertha, but because I think it's very unfair and I think it's very derogatory to a lot of very good people that happen to think that there's a possibility that this man was not born in this country. And by the way, if that were true, you know, it's very interesting. If that were true, it would be the greatest scam in the history of this country. So I feel that there is certainly a chance that he was not born in this country. Now, if he were not born in this country, that means he can't be president. It's very simple.
Ah, yes. 5 years ago, Donald Trump launched a campaign to question the legitimacy of President Obama's birth certificate, claiming that the president was born a Kenyan-born man named, wait for it, Barry Soweto. By the way, Barack Obama's stepfather was named Sotoro, not Soweto, just saying. Donald Trump perpetuated the birther movement for years, and his relentless attempt to undermine the country's first black president paid off. Mother Jones reported that Trump's support among likely GOP voters nearly doubled once he started talking about the birth certificate. So it shouldn't surprise any of us that Trump would fuel conspiracy theories as a candidate. Theories like how the father of his presidential rival, Ted Cruz, had a role in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That's not true. Or that thousands of Muslims celebrated the destruction of the World Trade Center on 9/11. Never happened. Or that the Central Park Five, the black and Latino teens accused of raping a white woman in 1989, were guilty and should have been executed, an idea he continued to flog even after they were exonerated by DNA evidence. Even inside the White House, tinfoil hat Trump continued, claiming the election that he won was rigged against him, and that millions of people voted illegally, which of course is the only reason he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. But the latest Trump conspiracy theory, which you might call the Trump Breitbart right-wing talk radio blue plate special, is truly in a class by itself. This one, pushed by the President of the United States, is that the former president, the aforementioned Barack Sotoro Obama, wiretapped Trump Tower during the campaign. A week after that tweet, which, to be clear, accuses the former president of the United States of something that United States presidents cannot do unilaterally and without a warrant, wiretap Trump Tower. The White House has yet to offer one shred of evidence for Trump's wiretapping claim because, of course, there isn't any. And joining me now is Tara Dowdell, business and political marketing consultant, Eric Boehlert of Media Matters, radio talk show host Charlie Sykes, and Naveed Jamali, former FBI double agent and author of How to Catch a Russian Spy. Thank you all for being here. Charlie, I got to go to you first. Let's talk about the people who are around Donald Trump who fuel his already sort of penchant for conspiracy theorizing. We are led to understand. This is the most disturbing thing. No, really quickly, I just want to give you a quick list of them. Around him are Steve Bannon, Sebastian Gorka, who's a known conspiracy theorist, Stephen Miller, Michael Anton. That's in his cabinet. But in terms of who he listens to, people like Alex Jones of InfoWars, Sean Hannity, and Breitbart. Should we be disturbed that that's who Donald Trump listens to?
Among all the things you ought to be disturbed about, this is probably the most disturbing thing. Look, there are real conspiracies in the world, but what's apparent is that Donald Trump doesn't have the ability to distinguish the real ones from the fake ones. The fact that he listens to Alex Jones, I mean, Alex Jones is from the deepest, darkest corners of the conspiracy monger fever swamp, and he believes, Sandy Hook was false flag, 9/11 was false flag, and the fact that Donald Trump called him up the week after the election to thank him for his support. This is scary stuff. The fact that you have guys like Gateway Pundit and Breitbart that now have White House press credentials. So you actually have, the paranoid. People ought to go back, by the way, and read the 1964 essay by Richard Hofstadter about the paranoid style in American politics.
Absolutely.
Because it predicts exactly what's going on here. And in order to understand Donald Trump's mind, you have to understand, his paranoid mindset and the fact that he has no immune system to these bizarre conspiracy theories, and that ought to alarm even his strongest supporters.
And I think the word, using that term, he has no immune system to it, I think is a really smart way to put it. Because, Naveed, we have a situation where this is a president who we're not sure he takes all of his intelligence briefings, but we know that he is being served by these same aides, by people like Stephen Bannon, who likes to be the last one in the room, a steady diet of headlines in his morning packet from places like Newsmax, his good friend Christopher Ruddy. We know that he is a consumer of WorldNet Daily, which is where the birther conspiracy theory started, that David Pecker of the National Enquirer is also a friend, and that he recently actually granted White House access and a tour, including the Lincoln bedroom, to Harvey Levin of TMZ. That is who the President of the United States is turning to and accessing for information, and he doesn't trust the intelligence community to give him information about the world.
Yeah, I mean, Joy, look, when it comes to the intelligence community, whether it's law enforcement or the actual IC, you know, the goal when they present the PDB, when they present this information to the president, is to do so objectively, not to push the president to go down one route for a policy. So that is objective, analyzed intelligence information. It's, you take raw stuff and you say, this is what it's telling us. Now you, Mr. President, make the decision. If you're relying on TMZ or Breitbart, those are places that have a very clear bent. They have a clear decision as to how they want a particular policy to go. That's not I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but that's obviously not objective analysis. That's not how any president should be making this. You should trust the people who have taken an oath to present you unbiased, you know, analyzed information. And if you're not doing that, you're missing a massive part of how you're going to make a decision.
And you know, Eric, one of the other things that disturbs me, and I think should disturb a lot of people, even if they are Republicans or generally want to be supportive of Donald Trump, is that you have Breitbart.com, which is not a news organization. It's a website that was started by the late Andrew Breitbart to fight Hollywood and what he saw as conspiracies against conservatives, embedded deeply in the administration. Not just Steve Bannon, who used to run the place, but people like Sebastian Gorka used to write for them, even though he's never, I don't believe he's ever been able to read the Quran in the original Arabic because he doesn't read Arabic, but he styles himself as an expert. Breitbart is essentially more embedded in the White House than the CIA or the NSA or the intelligence community.
Which is crazy because, I mean, even just a couple of years ago, Breitbart was like a punchline within the conservative media. I mean, it was not taken seriously. People at National Review, people at Wall Street Journal, they didn't read Breitbart and say, oh boy, I better follow up this story. They thought it was a joke. Look, and they are embedded in the White House, and Trump is getting his stuff from the deepest corners of the alt-right media, right? And so he's taking these typed up, you know, when he accused Obama of wiretapping, it was Breitbart who typed up this right-wing radio rant. There was no reporting or anything on that. And, you know, I just have to say, like, conspiracy theory, I mean, we might be too kind. I mean, conspiracy theory to me is someone who's kind of in over their head, kind of went down a rabbit hole, can't tell right from wrong. I mean, to me, you know, Trump is just this pathological liar, right? And he's shown himself to be that all the time. And for the press, the challenge is, you have to say that, right? You know, the journalism is saying what's in front of you every day. And what we see every day is a congenital liar, right? Massive insecurities who's adopted his own reality. And that really has to be how he's portrayed.
And for the media, Tara, the danger is that the media then chases these rabbits down these rabbit holes. That Donald Trump tweets something that, to Eric's point, is literally lifted off of a right-wing radio rant. But he, because he's president, can turn that not only into policy, but into news coverage and send reporters chasing after whether or not Barack Obama somehow managed to wiretap Trump Tower.
And that's exactly what he's doing. And what's so dangerous about it is he is mainstreaming many of these conspiracy theories. And I think people who are people who follow the media, people who read it more voraciously are thinking, oh, no one could possibly believe this. But I cannot tell you the number of times I've had Democrats ask me if some of these things had merit. And so I think people need to understand that even if you're a Democrat, if you're not someone who is always in touch with what's going on, you're working a lot, number of hours, you could be susceptible hearing the repetition of these conspiracy theories and the prevalence of them. You could be susceptible to believing them. And that's dangerous for left-leaning voters, for people who would agree with Democratic policy positions. So I think people should take this more seriously than they really are. The other thing I would say about this is Trump, on the one hand, I do think does espouse to some of these theories because he has a huge ego. So he wants to believe things that stroke that ego, right? So I think he is susceptible, and I think he's being manipulated by people in his administration. I've worked in administrations, and there are those people around you who will read your weaknesses. If you're a governor or a president, they'll read your weaknesses, certain staffers who have their own agenda, and they will take those weaknesses and they will reinforce and exploit those weaknesses to advance their agenda. And I believe that's happening to Donald Trump.
And I want to go to you on this, Naveed, because you have both that inside and outside the administration. You have people like Steve Bannon who clearly have read Donald Trump's weaknesses and are using them to advance Breitbart's agenda, but you also have outside interests, people like Russia who can read them too. We just had a meeting between Nigel Farage, who's the UKIP party, that's the Brexit party in Britain, have a secret weird meeting with Julian Assange, who, again, left and right have once considered him to be some sort of fighter for freedom and transparency. He's been had affinities for liberals as well as for now conservatives like Sean Hannity, but they too, Naveed, could read Donald Trump's weaknesses and use them, no?
Absolutely. And, you know, and Joy, this is one of the things that bothers me so much about the administration is that there is this, you know, they don't admit to anything unless they're actually exposed and the facts are presented to them. And one of the biggest things that concerns me is, you know, something as simple as foreign contact. Look, you go back to Sessions, for example. Perhaps the meeting with the ambassador was innocuous, but the failure to disclose it. Flynn, the failure to disclose that he was, you know, he was now registered as a foreign agent for Turkey. These are things that these people should know better. And the fact that they are not disclosing it up front, you know, to me that is perhaps a clear indication when you hide those things, when you make a concerted effort to not disclose that, that is very disconcerting. It also, frankly, Joy, that very well could be something that's prosecutable. I mean, failure to disclose foreign contact is, you know, especially if you have a clearance, that's no bueno. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, and you know, Charlie, why aren't people on the right more concerned that somebody like Sebastian Gorka, who it's not even clear he's been able to get a top security clearance because of some of his past, I think he's had some weird, interesting legal issues, or that somebody like Alex Jones has the ear of the President of the United States? Where is the outcry on the right?
Well, there ought to be outcry on the right, and this is part of the problem of creating these alternative reality silos where, you know, I think a lot of conservatives just kind of want to turn a blind eye to it. You know, these are the postcards from the fringe, you know, reasonable people will prevail. But the problem is this is who the president is listening to. And the reality is that, you know, and somebody made the point a few minutes ago, you know, we all move on. Life comes at us kind of fast. We move on. But a lot of these falsehoods, these hoaxes, these conspiracy theories are believed by people out there in the base. You know, I was shocked to find out, you know, the number of people who believed, you know, the birther theories after they had been exposed year after year after year. So there's two forms of damage. Number one is, of course, the president is listening to these people. He puts these false stories out which people believe, and at a certain point, I think that we have a lot of Americans that no longer actually care whether or not the information is true or not. That what we have is an attack on the whole concept of, is truth knowable? You have your conspiracy theories, we have our conspiracy theories. So the damage to the culture, I think, is going to be very deep and possibly long-lasting.
Yeah, and Eric, I mean, I suspect that you probably agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is this disconnect in terms of what's the conversation, where our facts. Look, there used to be, you know, Senator Patrick Moynihan, I mean, the famous quote, you don't get to have your own facts. We are so far beyond that now. People absolutely do have their own facts. And look, and it leads the mainstream media in the middle, right? How are they going to deal with this? DC Press used to deal with how are we going to deal with administration, how are we going to deal with pushback, how are we going to deal with politics. They have to deal with this tidal wave of fake news in a concerted effort just to lie, an administration that lies on a daily basis.
And I can tell you one way that we shouldn't be dealing with it is giggling and laughing when the spokesman for the President of the United States stands up and says, well, Donald Trump didn't believe the jobs numbers before, they were fake before, but now that we're here, they're real. That isn't funny.
That is not a joke.
And I think that we have a situation where the media wants to be amused by Donald Trump still, after all this time, wants to take him seriously, wants to be amused by him. That isn't funny. This is an administration that lies about everything. They lie about little things, big things, jobs numbers. They lie about everything. We need to get ourselves into a posture where we're not giggling anymore about it. That was my little editorial. Thank you, Ed, Tara Dowdell, Eric Bollert, and Charlie Sykes. Naveed Jamali will be back later in the show.